Hi guys, it's Dani again, back with another video in my knit tips series. I got a comment on my blog today from Sally, who's from my home state of Alaska, and she was interested in a video on lace chart knitting, and I had planned to do this anyway, so I figured I'd just do it today. Lace charts are kind of scary to a lot of people, and so I kind of want to demystify that. There's really no reason to be scared of a lace chart. A good chart will give you everything you need to be able to work it. It'll give you a key for any of the symbols that you're going to see in the chart, and it will give you the actual chart itself. And the great thing about a chart versus just written out directions is you can kind of see what you're going to end up with. You can sort of see the shape of what you're going to end up with. So I have printed out one of my charts that I've done for a sock pattern that I did. That's a really simple chart, and I've also done little flashcards with each of the keys, and we're just going to kind of go over each of those keys, and I'm going to kind of cover a couple of the little tips and tricks that I've learned in knitting from charts. Now, a lot of people complain about charts because they don't understand why the pattern writer couldn't just write out what it is. And I personally prefer patterns that do both, that will do the chart and will do the written directions. Ysolda Teague is a great example of that. A lot of times she does both the chart and the written directions, and I love that. Sometimes, though, in the interest of brevity in a pattern, it is more space efficient just to do a chart, especially when you get into the more complex lace patterns, because if you were to write that out, it would be like probably 2 full pages of just lace directions. And so there's always this constant fight between making a pattern that is good and is going to be comprehensive and going to be easy for the knitter to follow, and giving the types of directions that you need to give in a brief enough manner that it's not a short novel. So that's why a lot of people do lace charts. So anyways, we're going to go over the lace chart today. I want to show you a couple things that really help me in a lace chart. First and foremost is a sticky note or a magnet or something to help keep your place. I recommend this in any kind of pattern that has more than one row. I got these great pattern magnets from Slip Stitch Studio on Etsy, and when I post this video, I'll link to her shop. And they're really neat. They're a pattern that is encased in a ribbon, and you don't need to have the magnetic board, because the way that she works it is she leaves a little space that's just fabric on the end, and so you can put the magnet around several sheets of paper and then just slide it up and down. So she kind of gives you the magnet board with it. She gives you the side. This you slide as you work up your rows, and you can keep track of where you're at. And I use them for all kinds of stuff, not just lace charts, but I use them when I'm following any kind of pattern with directions. And I even use them when I'm following recipes as well, when I'm baking. Okay, so you're going to want to put your little magnet down here at the bottom. Most charts will show you where to begin. They'll have a row of numbers on this side, which is your how many rows you're going to do, and then you're going to have a line of numbers across the bottom. That's going to be how many stitches across. This particular one is 22 stitches across and 47 rows high. A lot of times, lace charts, especially because you have what's called a rest row or a just knit across or just purl across row, they only chart the lace rows, and then there's a row in between. Now, the chart should tell you that, or the directions should tell you that on, on all the odd rows you're going to be working according to the chart, and on all the even rows you're going to just be knitting or you're just going to be purling. For this particular one, because it's a sock, so it's knit in the round, the even rows are just knit arounds, and that's noted in the pattern. So you're going to start at the beginning here, just like it, and it corresponds to your knitting. So in your knitting, you're always starting on the right side. I had to see what side I was on there. So so you're always going to start on there. Now, because you can't really see the symbols in there, I made little tiny flashcards too. So an empty box is a knit stitch. Usually a knit stitch on the right side, or a purl stitch on the wrong side. Sometimes it'll say. Sometimes you might see this, which is a dash in the middle of the box, which is a purl stitch. Now, usually you see those if you're purling on a right side row, if you've got purl bumps on a right side row. A box with a circle in it is a yarn over. Now, the thing with yarn overs are usually paired with something else. So you're going to do a yarn over, usually either there's going to be a yarn over and then a knit two together, or a yarn over and slip, slip, knit, or even a yarn over and a knit one, depending on the lace pattern. So when it shows that you have a box with a yarn over in it for that stitch, you're going to do that, and it's important to know what comes after that, because that's going to actually be your next stitch. So it doesn't really make sense because you're not working a yarn over into a stitch. You're doing it before the next stitch, which is now creating that stitch, which is why it's usually paired with either a knit two together or a slip, slip, knit, and those are slashes one way or the other. You can kind of see those there. And for this one, I did a knit two together through the back loop or a slip, slip, knit. Those are sort of interchangeable. It's a different leaning decrease. Because then you're decreasing for that yarn over that you're creating, so you don't end up with more stitches. The only time that that's not necessarily the case is in a triangle shawl or a circular shawl where you're using your yarn overs to increase out. And so they may not always be paired with a decrease. But you're still going to pay attention to what comes after that yarn over, because a lot of times it's a knit or it's a purl or something like that. The other thing that you may see, which is really common in lace patterns, is something like this that I call the little chicken's foot. And this is a slip one, knit two together, pass, slip, stitch over. Now, that's what this is in my particular pattern. Sometimes you will see this same symbol, but with a different direction. So it's always important to note whatever the designer is using in his or her key for the chart. You want to make sure that you're doing that and not just assuming that they're using some kind of standardized symbol system. So now the next thing, this video is already running a little bit long, so we're going to wrap it up here real quick. The next thing, so as you're moving along, now your rest rows are going to be coming the other direction. So you're going to just move this up to your next row as you go along, so you can keep track of where you're at in the pattern, and you just move it up. Now, again, a lot of times for this particular pattern, for my Polaris sock pattern, you just do one repeat of this chart and that's it, and then you continue knitting in the round. For a lot of lace patterns, especially in shawls or sweaters or things that have a smaller lace repeat, you're going to keep repeating it. So it's really important to note whether you're repeating it across the row, because a lot of times the chart will only give you one repeat, and then when you get to the end of that chart, you're going to repeat it for the rest of the row. It doesn't give you the whole thing. And then sometimes you're going to repeat it up as well as you go along. So that's just kind of the quick version of lace chart reading. We'll get a little bit more into it in some future videos if people have specific questions with charts, and I may even do one for cables as well, because cables are another thing that's often charted. Color work is often charted too, but that makes a little bit more sense because usually it's in color, and so you're just changing colors. So that one usually makes a little bit more sense. So I hope this has been helpful, and until I see you next time, happy knitting!